Night News coming to you live from Algiers with me, Madam Zia, to the headlines. Horrible massacres continue to be committed by the Israeli occupation in Gaza. Starvation paints new scenes of brutality with famine and malnutrition, leaving around 200 people dead. In Sudan, casualties are reported following RSF shelling in Kordofan. Al-Burhan insists the battles will continue until every inch of the country is liberated, as the army announces the withdrawal of military forces from the capital, Khartoum, after its recovery. And Putin meets again with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow. The Kremlin calls the talks constructive and useful. Hello again and welcome back to your nightly news. First in our file, 20 Palestinians were martyred and others injured early Wednesday when a truck overturned on top of dozens of starving people waiting for aid in central Gaza. The government media officer in Gaza said the aid truck overturned after Israeli forces directed it onto a dangerous route, highlighting a deliberate effort to place civilians in harm's way. The government media office in Gaza condemned the Israeli occupation's ongoing crime of systematic starvation and the full closure of border crossings, holding it fully responsible for the worsening humanitarian crisis. The statement issued Wednesday reported that only 84 aid trucks entered the strip on Tuesday, most of which were looted due to the security chaos deliberately instigated by the occupation as part of a broader strategy to spread disorder and hunger, undermining Palestinian cohesion and resilience.
Through preventing the organized distribution of aid and allowing it to pass under chaotic and dangerous conditions, the occupation aims to engineer disorder and starvation. This incident is a direct result of the collective starvation policy, with the occupying authorities hampering the organized entry of aid, imposing dangerous routes for trucks transporting food, which forces the besieged civilians to rush towards them.
And hospitals in the Gaza Strip recorded the deaths of 5 Palestinians due to hunger over the past 24 hours. In a statement on Wednesday, the Palestinian Ministry of Health reported that the total number of deaths caused by famine and malnutrition among Palestinians has risen to 193 martyrs, including 96 children. And Algeria affirmed that the systematic starvation taking place in Gaza is no longer a secret and the entire world is witnessing it. Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Ahmad Benjama, stated during a UN Security Council session on Tuesday, dedicated to discussing the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian cause, that hunger in Gaza is no longer an exception. The water crisis in the besieged Gaza Strip is worsening. Many residents already ravaged by hunger are forced to walk long distances through devastated areas each day to fetch water, an exhausting journey that yields only a small portion of what they need to stay alive and avoid death by thirst. Nabil Khazini is the following report.
As the first light of dawn breaks over Gaza, the air is already thick with heat. Inside the cramped tents like this one, where Rida and her 7 children sleep, the temperature rises even quicker. Outside, the humidity presses down like a heavy blanket, making each breath feel thick, but Rida's love for her children burns bright. Though, with water scarce, it feels like nothing can ease their suffering, as their small bodies struggle in the suffocating heat. Yet she keeps going, relentless, doing everything she can, as the sun climbs higher and the day drags on.
حار جدا لدرجة It's very hot because of the nylon of the tent and the sun. It's so hot that I pour water on my children and try to cool them down by fanning them with a tray. There is no electricity, no fan, nothing. All day long I try to cool them down with a tray. I'm afraid something might happen to them.
This is just another hot summer day for people living in Gaza, where life is an everlasting struggle. While global attention has focused on starvation in Gaza, where after 20 months of a devastating war, aid groups say the water crisis is just as severe. Many have to walk long distances to collect water, which is often polluted and unsafe to drink. The wells are contaminated by sewage and chemicals from the rubble around them, causing many diseases.
The situation is nothing short of catastrophic. I mean, we see a systematic dismantling of wash infrastructure, and it's just happening in front of us. We see people basically starving, they are dehydrated, they are desperate, and now they are left without water as well, which is very, very much concerning. Just giving an example of a recent wash assessment, which we have done together at the WASH cluster as well in Gaza, shows that 96% of the people, of the households, are facing moderate to severe water insecurity in Gaza right now.
Yet despite everything, people in Gaza continue to endure, holding on to hope and doing whatever they can to care for their families.
Several Palestinians were martyred and others wounded by Israeli occupation fire targeting several areas across the Gaza Strip since early this morning. According to Gaza's hospitals, occupation forces opened fire on civilians and Israeli warplanes bombed different parts of the Strip, resulting in the deaths of 41 Palestinians, including 17 people who were waiting for aid. Others were also injured with varying degrees of wounds. Hezbollah pointed out that the Salam government has blatantly disregarded President Joseph Aoun's pledge to discuss a national security strategy. The party called on the government to focus primarily on taking all necessary measures to liberate all Lebanese territory from Israeli occupation.
The government of Prime Minister Nawaf Salam committed a major mistake in taking a decision to strip Lebanon of its weapons to resist the Israeli enemy, which leads to weakening Lebanon's ability and position in the face of the continued Israeli-American aggression against it, and achieves for Israel what it did not achieve in its aggression against Lebanon. This decision came as a result of the U.S. envoy Barak's dictates, which were mentioned in the reasons for presenting it in the Council of Ministers and the pretext of its promulgation. This decision undermines Lebanon's sovereignty and allows Israel to mess with its security, geography, politics, and the future of its existence.
One person was martyred in an Israeli airstrike targeting a vehicle on the road to the town of Bital, southeast of the city of Baalbek in Lebanon. The Lebanese Ministry of Health, citing the Public Health Emergency Operations Center, announced that Israeli occupation aircraft launched a strike on a civilian vehicle in the town of Bital, resulting in one martyr. Lebanese news agency reported that an Israeli drone targeted the civilian car with 3 missiles on the road to Bital, Baalbek. The Secretary of State to the Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of the national community abroad, Sofiane Chayeb, emphasized that Algeria, recognized as a transit country under the UN definition, is making tangible efforts within its regional spheres to support landlocked African countries in their development course. Speaking during the plenary session of the 3rd United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries in the city of Awaza, Turkmenistan, Chayeb explained that Algeria's commitment is reflected in its involvement in major structural projects across the African continent, such as the Trans-Saharan Highway, the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline, and the backbone Trans-Saharan Fiber Optic Link. Sofiane Chayeb also affirmed that the challenges faced by landlocked developing countries in achieving their development goals, such as a lack of investment in infrastructure, weak technological transfer, limited access to international financial resources, and climate change could be addressed through the implementation of the outcomes of the 3rd UN Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries and the 4th UN Summit on Financing for Development held in Seville from June 30 to July 3, 2025. The Algerian group Sanagam and the Pakistani company Fatima Fertilizers signed a memorandum of understanding on Wednesday aiming to strengthen bilateral partnership in the fields of mining and various types of fertilizers. According to a statement from Algeria's Ministry of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, the agreement seeks to establish a framework for productive cooperation between the two parties, focusing on the development, enrichment, and transformation of phosphate raw materials extracted from the Bir el-Ater mine, which holds reserves estimated at more than 850 million tons. And in a related development, Algeria's Ministry of Energy and Mines revealed efforts to explore partnership and investment opportunities through industrial projects, targeting both Algerian and Pakistani markets as well as other markets. The ministry statement also noted the possibility of studying projects that aim to enhance the value of mineral resources and create added value through local manufacturing, thereby boosting Algeria's capacity in its vital sector through technical and technological expertise exchange between Sanagam and Fatima Fertilizers. As you have followed in our top stories, dozens of Sudanese were killed and others injured in heavy artillery shelling carried out by the rapid support forces on several neighborhoods in West Kordofan, according to the Dar Hamar emergency room in the state. The same source added that the RSF launched a violent attack on several detention centers in the city of Al-Nuhur, west of Kordofan, including the Jenin and Kritish prisons. The assault resulted in the killing of 27 Sudanese civilians and injuries to others after they were forced to pay ransom. The attacks also extended to the city of Al Ubaid, the capital of North Kordofan state. The chairman of Sudan's Transitional Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, declared that the war will only end with the elimination of the last rebel in the country. He added that the army will not lay down its weapons until the rebellion and brutal aggression are completely eradicated. During a continued tour of towns and villages in the capital, Khartoum, al-Burhan emphasized that the Sudanese armed forces will continue their military operations until the sieges on al-Fashir and Kadugli are lifted.
We are determined that this battle will end with the end of this entire group. We also salute all the people fighting now in Sudan, in Al-Fashir and everywhere. We will win, and we will win with the support of the Sudanese people. We will win with the Sudanese citizens. We will reach every place in Sudan to eliminate these groups.
In the same context, al-Burhan, during a press conference, stated in Khartoum that the battle continues in al-Fashir, al-Inaina, in all areas besieged by the rapid support forces, and will go on until their liberation, as he put it.
This battle will continue, whether in al-Fashir, al-Janina, Kadugli, or anywhere in Sudan we reach. We will defend the citizens. We fight daily, everywhere. We're present in Sudan, and we will fight. We will fight until the land of Sudan is liberated.
Still in Sudan, al-Burhan also revealed that a decision has been made to evacuate military forces from the capital, Khartoum, as the city begins to recover. And in other developments, Yuri Yushakov, the Russian presidential aide, described the conversation between President Vladimir Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff as useful and constructive. This was stated by the Russian presidential aide to journalists following the meeting between the Russian leader and the U.S. Special Envoy held earlier on Wednesday at the Kremlin.
It was quite a useful and constructive discussion when it comes to its topics. First of all, it was the Ukraine crisis, and the second topic was prospects of possible development of strategic cooperation between the United States and Russia. On our part, in particular on the Ukrainian issue, some signals were transmitted. Corresponding signals were also received from President Trump.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday that his envoy Steve Witkoff made significant progress during his meeting with Putin. In a post on Truth Social, Trump added that he briefed some of Washington's European allies on the latest developments following the talks, noting that there is broad agreement that the war in Ukraine must come to an end. He affirmed that efforts are underway to achieve that in the coming days and weeks. Thus, the deadline set by U.S. President Donald Trump to impose more sanctions on Russia is approaching. The relationship between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to draw intense scrutiny. This comes at a time when the conflict is heading towards a more aggressive path, amidst hope for reaching a ceasefire. Usamaya is the report.
As the clock ticks towards a critical sanctions deadline, the relationship between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to draw intense scrutiny.
We just have to be careful.
A timeline of their interactions and statements regarding the Ukraine war reveals a complex interplay of diplomacy, pressure, and strategic maneuvering.
The war should have never started. If you had a competent president, which you didn't, the war wouldn't have happened. The war in Ukraine would have never happened if I were president.
Trump and Putin engaged in a series of diplomatic exchanges aimed at de-escalating the conflict. Putin showed openness to discussions with Trump on issues like the Ukraine war and energy prices, while Trump claimed both Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed a desire for peace.
We have a meeting with Russia tomorrow. We're going to see what happens.
As the sanctions deadline approaches, the evolving relationship between Trump and Putin remains a focal point of international attention.
With the current US president, I have always had business, exclusively business, but at the same time, pragmatic and trustful relations. I can't disagree with him that if he was president, if his victory was not stolen in 2020, then maybe there would not be the crisis in Ukraine that arose in 2022.
With several unsuccessful rounds of talks between Russia and Ukraine to put an end to the conflict, there is lingering skepticism about how far Trump will go. He has dispatched his special envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow for the fifth time for last-minute talks, and on Friday, Trump admitted he did not think sanctions would have much impact on Russia. In the end, the clock is ticking, not just for sanctions, but for the delicate balance of power and diplomacy that has defined this era of U.S.-Russia relations.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged on Wednesday Washington to ramp up pressure on Russia to end the war that began in 2022 as the U.S. envoy arrived in Moscow. In a social media post, Zelensky stressed the need to intensify all available pressure tools from the US, Europe, and the G7, saying the Kremlin will only seek an end to the war when it feels sufficient pressure. Authorities in Kiev announced Wednesday that 2 people were killed in a Russian airstrike targeting a summer camp in the Zaporizhia region, southern Ukraine. Regional Governor Ivan Fedorov said on Telegram that drone strikes injured 12 others, including at least 2 children. And hours before U.S. President Donald Trump imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods over the country's oil imports from Moscow, an energy expert said on Wednesday that India is buying Russian oil purely for economic reasons and not due to any political alignment. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump expressed discontent over India companies importing Russian oil. Narendra Taneja, chairman of the Independent Energy Policy Institute, said that companies import Russian oil because Russia offers very good economics and discount.
We import oil from Russia. Our companies import oil from Russia, both public sector companies and private sector companies, because Russia offers very good economics, discount. That's the only reason. That's not dictated by the government of India, or there is no such policy on the part of the government of India. We are a free economy, just like the United States, and our companies, our refiners, they find it attractive, and they think it's very good economics. So I think it's no love for Russia. It's economics.
Armenia announced Wednesday that Washington will host a summit this week between its prime minister and the presidents of the US and Azerbaijan in a renewed effort to reach a peace agreement between Yerevan and Baku. The Armenian government said Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan will visit the US on August 7 to 8 to meet with President Donald Trump to strengthen strategic ties. A trilateral meeting with Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev is also planned to promote peace, prosperity, and economic cooperation in the region. Ghana's presidency announced Wednesday that the ministers of defense and environment were killed in a helicopter crash that also involved 3 crew members and 5 passengers. Presidential Chief of Staff Julius Debra confirmed that Defense Minister Edward Omani Boama and Environment Minister Ibrahim Murtala Muhammad were among the victims. Earlier, the Ghanaian Air Force reported the military helicopter went missing from radar after taking off from Accra en route to Obuasi, northwest of the capital.
I have the unpleasant duty, sadly, to announce a national tragedy involving the crash of a military helicopter this morning around the Adansi area in Ashanti region. Government regrets to announce the demise of the following persons in the tragic crash. And government extends our condolences and sympathies to the families of our comrades and the servicemen who died in service to the country. All flags are to fly at half-mast until further notice.
In Nigeria, armed men abducted more than 60 people in the country's northwest in the latest mass kidnapping, according to Reuters, citing local sources. The sources said that at least 45 women and children were taken during a nighttime raid on 5 villages, marking the second mass abduction in the region in just a few days. They also noted the surge in violence and the illegal use of weapons. Moving on to some cultural news now, the Algerian band Ishraq Bunaisawi performed at Expo 2025 in Osaka, Japan, captivating an international audience with their lively rhythms and traditional music. The performance, which featured colorful displays of Algerian dress, was particularly well received by the Japanese public, offering a rich and engaging showcase of Algerian cultural heritage.
I'm interested in Algerian music and sounds. Algerian music is very, very beautiful, very soulful.
We chose specific pieces to help introduce our Algerian traditions to the audience here, especially the Japanese public, from our clothing to our music. We hope this participation leaves a positive impact and that we've represented our country well.
And on this very beautiful note, we end our news bulletin for tonight. If you missed any part, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.